Hello. Now, this video will probably be a short one. But anyway, an interesting thing you'll see in society is people who are, saying things like they want to rewrite our history and stuff like that. But sometimes you do want to rewrite your history. Like if you're German or Spanish or Portuguese or Italian or British or American or, the list goes on. There's atrocities committed by many countries. And one of them is most certainly England. And, of course, England is also because they have the rhetoric of Americans. But they actually had a policy of rewriting history. Let's look at this video by Novara Media.
They really do want to rewrite our national stories. We really are at risk of a kind of know-nothing cancel culture.
Yeah, no offense, people who complain about cancel culture, generally people who are very rich and, very much present in the sort of space of talk.
Iconoclasm. And so we conservatives will defend our history and cultural inheritance. To edit it...
Maybe don't defend it. It's like, yes, we will defend all of the very similar to Nazis sort of things that we did in our history. All of the child slaves, all of the really racist laws, all of the really racist rhetoric, all of the genocide, all of them, we will defend that.
Now is as dishonest as a celebrity trying furtively to change his entry in Wikipedia. And it's a betrayal.
Actually, that's against Wikipedia's terms of service for information. Yeah, you're not allowed to change, you're not allowed to affect the Wikipedia page of something you're connected to.
Of our children's education.
Britain's Conservatives are obsessed with the idea that we should never erase our history.
There is a cancer in our educational...
No offence, but fascist boy here is probably not the best.
establishment.
Attempting to change the history of this country, attempting to airbrush...
Boy on fascist talk radio owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News for information.
...out the people they don't like from the history of this country.
The idea that modern-day Oxford University is in any way racist or oppressive is nonsense.
Why do you stay in this country? If you...
Okay, first of all, we'll get to him, but like...
Any way racist or oppressive.
I mean, it's just a really prestigious university that all the rich white boys go to. That's all. Oh yes, that might be why people might see it as racist, because of all the racists that attend. That might be the thing there.
Is nonsense.
Why do you stay in this country? If you take such offence when you see Nelson's column, if you take such offence...
Why don't you fuck off and die then, buddy, Don't talk to someone as if, why don't you stay in this country, when we're all being racist pricks, why do you do this, why do you stay in the country? What you should do is, you should just, see what I mean?
Offence when you hear Winston Churchill's name.
It feels sort of like, with just one Sikh soldier there, you start going, oh, did the Sikh soldiers serve with the English soldiers? I'm not a historian, so I don't know.
So shut the fuck up.
This whining isn't new, but after a statue-toppling spree last year, starting with Edward Colston's statue in Bristol, the whinging has reached a fever pitch.
This kind of behaviour is a step on the road that leads to the, to mob rule, to the tumbrils, to the guillotine.
This is about...
I mean, I would be in favour of the guillotine, but, how exactly does removing statues of racist pricks, lead to the guillotine, though?
Our cultural heritage being under threat.
These are our
great British values.
So great British values, back in the day, what great British values? Our great British values are to go to country, just commit genocide on the people and just have that. And they're trying to take away our great British values. Back in the day, my great-grandfather, he could go into a country, he could murder a bunch of civilians, take a country, and he could be given a knighthood by a queen. And yeah, that's our great British values right there, you know. And they're just trying to take that away from us. They're trying to say we should not support people who commit genocide. Like, well, what's that about, you know? My statement there would be: Would you put a statue of Adolf Hitler in you know, London, or in Germany, or in, like, Israel? Would you do that? No, you fucking wouldn't, because that would be insane.
We're going to strip away our Great Britain.
These people, be clear, want to destroy our country.
Okay, you do sound like a Nazi if you talk like that.
In Britain, this has caused outrage on the right. Sure, these were awful people, they insinuate, though they never actually say that, but they were products of a different time. We shouldn't...
Weird argument for revering someone. It's like, yes, I mean, that was a different time, you know. When you tortured someone, that was normal for torturers to do. Not really, actually. I mean, other people didn't do it. It was just all of you. It's just all of your ancestors are psychopaths.
Be erasing the past and bringing down statues and forgetting our history. Well, that just isn't British. But what if forgetting history was a central part of British identity?
But that's inherently the point, though. It's like, you know, it is.
What if erasing the historical record wasn't just encouraged, but a matter of national policy and the basis of a decades-long clandestine operation to whitewash colonial misdeeds? Well, it turns out that it was, and its name, Operation Legacy. In the aftermath of the Second World War, it was quickly apparent that Britain's empire was falling apart. This came
before it, like,
as something of a shock. After all, as recently as 1939, it had arguably been the most powerful empire in history.
I mean, it lost Ireland, America, it lost a few already, like.
Exercising control over
I mean, it hadn't really lost Ireland, really, like.
a quarter of the world's population. Rallying the country in 1940, Churchill still talked of an empire lasting 1,000 years.
That if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour.
Yeah, sure, when you fought really like-minded individuals who just, you know.
And yet, by 1947,
why on your side?
The previously unthinkable happened as India gained independence. A year later, British troops pulled out of Palestine, and the manner of both withdrawals created scars which remain with us today. The standoff between India and Pakistan being one, and the Israel-Palestine conflict being another.
Yeah.
A hallmark of such retreat was the destruction of official records. During the partition of India in 1947, one administrator observed how the press greatly enjoyed themselves with the pool of smoke which hung over Delhi during the mass destruction of documents by the British. And after the withdrawal from Palestine was announced, a correspondent in Jerusalem wrote how the burning of files is progressing satisfactorily.
Yeah, not a pattern at all.
The fact such seemingly un-British behaviour was recorded by the press was a cause for embarrassment. So, by the early 1950s, as it became obvious that the whole empire would eventually go, these efforts became a coordinated secret programme to eliminate all...
Yeah, this occurred in Ireland as well.
Evidence of British wrongdoing.
Possibly. There's a conspiracy theory that one of the fires that destroyed a lot of documents for Irish history was possibly maybe caused by the British. So one of the interesting things is that you know, when you look at the history behind it, there was, when you had the Civil War, there was and then the War of Independence, you had a lot of like buildings that caught fire, and you know, some of them held documents and some of them held very incriminating documents and historical documents that have been lost for history. Like, we just don't have them anymore, and that's might have been caused by the British.
This was the genesis of Operation Legacy, so called to protect the legacy of Britain after the loss of its empire. Its aim being to maintain the charade that Britain was somehow different and more progressive than other colonial powers, a myth fundamental to our national identity even today.
Not our, but your.
The British put in a system that actually brought about education, that
no, actually, it took it away. It removed the teachings of indigenous languages, and you know, so that
actually brought about partial emancipation of women.
No, it fucking didn't. That's a full-on lie. So, for example, in my country, women had far more rights before the British took over than they did even after hundreds of years of British rule. And because of British rule, even after the British were kicked out. So, no.
That actually brought about democracy. It's time.
No, actually it didn't. I know this might come as a shock, but Britain is not a democracy now. You have a fucking monarch. I like. It's like a broad democracy, you know, when you have a monarch, and you vote. You don't vote for your prime minister, and you're not allowed to vote if you're a woman. You don't own property, and yes. Democracy. Not like those countries where you hold elections, free and fair elections. No. We want a democracy.
Time to stop seeing empire as a dirty word.
I know, it's a pretty dirty word, actually.
One example of how pervasive that myth is can be found in the Home Office Guide for the UK citizenship test. It tells us there was, for the most part, an orderly transition from...
Yeah, sure. Being told, how about this? We give you partial independence, but you must stay part of you must recognize the king. There we are. How about that? And if you don't sign that, we will have war in 3 days, and we will wreck your country to the ground. So, go on, sign.
Empire to Commonwealth, with countries being granted their independence. And such a convenient, comforting myth is based precisely on what the right claim they dislike: the erasure of history.
The woke religion.
Rewriting.
The woke religion.
History.
Judge history in whichever way it chooses to.
Changing school curriculums.
Why? Isn't he the idiot who's like, sorry, and your man,
claim they dislike.
So,
the erasure of history.
The woke.
Isn't your man the fellow who's like, I'm no historian.
Religion.
Rewriting history.
The
Judge
fascist.
history in whichever way it chooses to.
Changing school curriculums.
wipe out any vestiges that there were bad people.
It's the erasing of history. If you start to try and delete individual little parts of history, you finish up with literally nothing left.
How extensive
I'm pretty sure they're adding to history, adding context.
Was Operation Legacy, and what kind of documents did it destroy? Well, we have something of an answer as a result of an instruction from Ian MacLeod, then Colonial Secretary in 1961. He wrote that post-independence nations should not be handed material that might embarrass Her Majesty's government, embarrass members of the police, military forces, public servants, or others such as police informers, that might betray intelligence sources or be used unethically by ministers in the successor government. Basically, anything viewed as negative was fair game for destruction.
Yeah.
This was necessary to eliminate evidence that would undermine the myth that the British...
In fact, a lot of stuff that just didn't matter at all was just burned because it was just like, yeah, we don't need it because we're leaving. You need it. The country that's taken, the government that's taken over needs it. But we don't need it because we're leaving. So...
establishment was busy constructing. This had explicitly racist, anti-democratic and anti-worker aspects, with long-held documents on political parties and trade unions, first among those set for destruction. Alongside them were any papers which might be interpreted as showing religious intolerance on the part of Her Majesty's government.
Yeah, and this occurred now. So this is a kind of semi-conspiracy theory, I guess you could call it. So they use British guns to basically do this. Effectively speaking, this was one of the things that people feel is a bit dodgy about it, which is that they effectively... This might have been caused by the British. So, the four courts in Dublin after Irish Free State troops fired upon it to drive out Irish Republican rebels who occupied and protested over the Treaty of the United Kingdom. The burning of four courts resulted in the loss of many important documents and records. Those guns were provided by the British, but they weren't good guns. They were inferior, yet they caused fires. Maybe might have been a bit of a situation caused by the British. Who knows? But the point is that is what occurred there. So, looking at that, that's just the thing. That's just the thing there. You do have to wonder, maybe might have been caused by the British, possibly. But I would say could have been. Could have been.
All papers which might be interpreted as showing racial discrimination against Africans. We might think the British Empire was less racist and bigoted than others, and it somehow prepared the countries it ruled over for democracy.
Oh, good God,
but that's partly because the
Good God, no. The British government helped a lot of dictators seize power. A lot of them. A lot of them very pro as well, certain British ideologies. They didn't want the British in control, but they were also pro, British ideology. So, I'm just saying, like, it's all well and good to be like, oh yeah, but like, they seem to be pretty pro a lot of British ideology when it came to like worker rights and like worker freedom and all this sort of stuff. So while sure they kicked the British out, did they actually remove British power? Not quite.
Records demonstrating otherwise were systematically destroyed. Here's another myth. Compared to the US before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Britain likes to think of itself as superior on issues of race. That makes some sense, given certain states in the US prohibited the cohabitation and marriage of whites and non-whites until just 60 years ago.
And even now, some of them would still be prone to certain...
And yet, between 1902 and 1961, the White Highlands of Kenya were exclusively reserved for white Europeans, hence the name. This was a form of apartheid under the British Empire, with white settlers who comprised a tiny part of the population owning most arable land. It was a similar situation in Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, and elsewhere where Britain did.
Like Uganda, for example, its homophobic laws come mostly from its history with Britain and its history with America.
Pretty much the same thing as the United States. It's just its racist apparatus was primarily overseas and therefore out of sight.
Yeah.
The word legacy in Operation Legacy also had a secondary meaning, with legacy files to be handed over to newly independent countries. But before such handovers took place, those files that weren't destroyed were extensively weeded. In Zambia, colonial officials were issued orders to destroy all papers which are likely to be interpreted either reasonably or by malice as indicating racial prejudice or religious bias on the part of Her Majesty's government.
As I said, kind of feels like they just wanted to burn a lot of documents that weren't just kind of, make the job harder for people.
In Kenya, instructions were given which meant only British subjects of European descent could participate in weeding. Ensuring that required an elaborate code. Files marked DG, for instance, were meant to be for the viewing of the Deputy Governor. In reality, however, DG indicated documents that could only be viewed by British officers of European descent. Documents marked Watch, stamped with a red W, were to be removed from the country in question or just destroyed.
Yeah.
The steps were taken to ensure that post-colonial governments would never learn such vitally important files existed, with those officials involved even told to keep their W stamps locked away. So why did this all happen? Well, the answer is quite simple. Because the British Empire committed innumerable atrocities.
Yeah, a lot of genocide.
In Kenya, for example, the weeding of official documents was particularly necessary after the suppression of the Mau Mau uprising. That struggle, which took place between 1952 and 1960, saw 1.5 million of the Kikuyu people and indigenous people of Kenya put in detention camps, with around 150,000 losing their lives during the uprising.
True.
During this period, white settlers openly called for the extermination of the Kikuyu, while mass torture was used.
Yeah,
It should come as no surprise then that on visiting Kenya in 1955, Labour MP Barbara Castle compared the regime's attitude to Nazism.
Yeah, and that's sort of my point. That's the thumbnail. Basically, inherently, they were basically Nazis. For your information, by the way, the British were the first to use concentration camps. So, yeah.
Some documents from the era survived, however, stashed away at the secretive Hanslope Park. But these were only revealed in 2011, after a lawsuit brought against the British government by Kenyan torture survivors. Their case was partly based on oral testimony gathered by Harvard academic Caroline Elkins, and what emerged from the migrated archives confirmed their accounts of systematic abuse and torture. Yet these files were a mere fragment of what should have been found. Expecting around 240,000 files, Elkins only uncovered several hundred. Yet even this was enough, and after multiple defeats in court, the British government finally moved to settle the case.
I would say it is not quite enough because of our punishment which we had, because for some years which we have been punished, it did not pay off.
It's important to say that such an admission of the truth happened against all of the odds. What other stories like it will never be uncovered. What's more, given the nature of Operation Legacy, the apology from the British government is essentially meaningless. Britain's problem is that it was caught. Similarly, in Aden in 1967, there was an orgy of burning when the British departed. As with Kenya, this made sense given the widespread use of torture by the British, something documented by Amnesty International in 1966. A number of people died in captivity, though we don't know how many, because the records have mostly been destroyed or remain inaccessible. Meanwhile, in Malaysia, while fighting an insurgency after World War II, the British used concentration camps and Agent Orange.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Inspiring the US to adopt similar tactics against the Vietnamese. Here too, documentary evidence was destroyed, and in 1957, one official reported how 5 lorry loads of documents were incinerated at a naval base in Singapore. What was so appalling?
Which doesn't look great, does it? Doesn't look great at all.
Those documents had to be destroyed and the past erased. After all, as we hear so frequently, doesn't Britain care about the truth? Doesn't it care about history? Operation Legacy continued all the way into the 1970s, and remarkably, almost none of the countries involved, besides Kenya and Malta, appear to have known anything about it. Despite claims to the contrary, Britain is among the most secretive states in the world. MI6, for example, has never made a single page of a single document public since its creation in 1909. Yet, alongside that secrecy was industrial-scale destruction of evidence documenting British crimes against humanity. The idea that Britain's empire was more progressive than those of other European powers is a myth. But the fact it's widely believed required erasing history as a matter of state policy. All of which means those who are pulling down statues aren't rewriting history, but starting an over.
But also, keep in mind, pulling down statues is inherently just like, let's not revere this person. You know. So.
Conversation about a colonial legacy which the powerful have done everything to obscure, dismiss, and deny for more than half a century. The people that really care about historical truth? Well, they're the ones who dumped Edward Colston in Bristol's docks. We want to create more videos like this. What kind of topics would you like to see covered specifically?
So yeah.
Put that in the comments below.
That was a video by Novara Media. Thanks for watching. Don't get a permanent TSB account. And yeah, thanks for watching all those things. Link should be in the description to Novara Media and the original video. Hopefully you'll subscribe all this. sort of stuff like that. And goodbye.